Don't embarrass us today, please. Just accept your diploma and sit back down quickly. That's what my sister Olivia whispered to me as we waited in the university auditorium on what should have been the proudest day of my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I just graduated summa cum laude from Westlake University with a double major in business and urban development. The first person in our family to complete a 4-year degree. My black graduation gown was pressed perfectly, my cap decorated. With only a simple tassel, nothing flashy. I wasn't planning to make a scene. I never did. I just nodded, the way I always had in our family. Silent, accommodating, invisible. But what happened next, and in the months that followed, would change everything. Not just for me, but for Olivia, who never imagined that the sister she pushed into the shadows would one day hold the keys to her future, quite literally. I was always the afterthought in the Chen family, the steady one, the reliable one, the one who never caused problems but also never seemed to shine. Growing up in Riverside, our middle-class neighborhood was filled with families trying to appear more successful than they were. My parents, James and Linda Chen, cared deeply about appearances, and Olivia, 2 years younger but somehow always the center of attention, gave them plenty to show off. Olivia was the performer, the social butterfly, the daughter with personality. She was invited to all the right parties, dated all the right boys, and had a knack for making herself the main character in every room. Our parents fueled this by investing everything in her dance lessons, her modeling workshops, her social connections. She was their trophy, while I was the reliable backdrop. I didn't resent her for it, not at first. I convinced myself that every family had its stars and its supporting cast. I focused on academics, on planning, on building something steady. I worked through high school, saving every dollar while Olivia spent weekends at the mall with Mom's credit card. I applied for scholarships and financial aid, piecing together my education while my parents helped fund Olivia's frequent major changes and extended finding herself gap years. Emma's just more independent, my mother would tell relatives when they asked why they weren't helping me with tuition. She likes to do things her own way. What she meant was, Emma doesn't need us. Emma doesn't reflect on us. Emma's achievements are just expected. By my senior year at Westlake, I'd secured an entry-level position at Horizon Development Group. My boss, Diane Reynolds, saw something in me that my family never had. Potential, ambition, and a mind for property development. That could take me places. I worked days at the office and evenings on my final courses, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night but never complaining. I was used to making things work with less. My graduation ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday in May. Perfect spring weather. Cherry blossoms lining the campus walkways. That golden afternoon light that makes everything look like a memory even as it's happening. I'd sent my family invitations 2 months in advance. 3 days before the ceremony, my mother called. "Emma, honey, I just wanted to check what time we need to be there on Saturday." "The ceremony starts at 2, I said. "But family should arrive by 1:30 to get good seats. I can only reserve 5, and I've got those for you. Dad, Olivia, Grandma Chen, and Uncle Rob." There was a pause. "Oh, sweetie, I meant to tell you. Olivia has been invited to the Petersons' lake house that weekend. You know how important the Peterson family is. Her friend Maddie's father is on the city council. It's such a great connection. For her?" I gripped my phone tighter. "Mom, this is my college graduation. I've been working toward this for 6 years." "I know, but you understand how these things work. Olivia can't pass up opportunities like this. She's at such a crucial networking stage. She's 22 and hasn't held a job for more than 3 months, I said, immediately regretting the edge in my voice. My mother's tone cooled. "That's unfair, Emma. She's exploring her options. Not everyone wants to rush into a corporate box like you." I closed my eyes, counted to 3. Fine. So Olivia won't be coming. Actually, my mother's voice lifted with that false brightness she used when delivering uncomfortable news. Your father and I thought we'd drive up with Olivia on Friday evening, drop her at the lake house, and then come to your graduation on Saturday. We might need to leave right after the main ceremony, though, to pick her up before dinner. I didn't argue. What was the point? I'd learned long ago that, in the competition for my parents' attention and support, I'd always come in second. Sure, Mom. That works. But it didn't work. Because on Saturday morning, I got another call. My father this time, explaining how they'd stayed for dinner at the Petersons after dropping Olivia off. How they'd been invited to stay over. How there was a brunch that morning they couldn't miss. How they'd try to make it for the end of my ceremony, but I shouldn't count on it. I sat on the edge of my bed in my small apartment, graduation gown hanging on the door, cap with its tassel on my desk, completely alone. I called my grandmother, who apologetically explained that without my parents to drive her, she couldn't make the 40-minute trip to campus. Uncle Rob had a similar excuse. I understood. In my family, logistics were only ever solved for Olivia's events. I considered not going. What was the point of walking across a stage if no one who was supposed to care was there to see it? But then my phone buzzed with a text from Diane, my boss. So proud of what you've accomplished, Emma. Can't wait to celebrate with you today. That single message meant more than my family's years of indifference. I took a deep breath, got dressed, and drove myself to my own graduation. The surprise came when I arrived at the auditorium and saw Olivia sitting in the family section, scrolling through her phone, looking bored and slightly irritated. Olivia? What are you doing here? I thought you were at the lake house. She glanced up, barely meeting my eyes. Change of plans. The Petersons' son brought his college friends and it got weird. I called Dad to pick me up this morning. So, are Mom and Dad here too? I looked around, heart suddenly lighter. No, they dropped me off. They had to go to that property auction Dad's been talking about. Some foreclosure he thinks is going to be an amazing investment. She rolled her eyes. They said to tell you congratulations. I'm supposed to record you getting your diploma or whatever. And that's when she'd leaned in and whispered, Don't embarrass us today, please. Just accept your diploma and sit back down quickly. I froze. What do you mean, embarrass you? I'm graduating with highest honors. She sighed dramatically. Yeah, but you know how you get when you're nervous. All stiff and awkward. Just don't trip or make some weird face that ends up in the video. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Another text from Diane. Saved you seats. 3rd row, left side. I looked over and saw Diane waving. Next to her sat Marcus from accounting, and 2 other colleagues from Horizon. They'd made signs, actual handwritten congratulations signs with my name on them. I have to go, I told Olivia. My colleagues are here. Your work friends came? She looked genuinely surprised, like she couldn't fathom why anyone would voluntarily celebrate my achievements. Yes, Olivia. People who actually know me and value what I do showed up today. I walked away before she could respond, joining Diane and my co-workers who greeted me with genuine enthusiasm. The ceremony proceeded as these things do. Speeches. About future potential. The reading of names. The crossing of stages. When they called Emma Chen, summa cum laude, double major in business and urban development, I heard actual cheering from the left section. Diane and my colleagues were on their feet. It wasn't a large crowd, but it was sincere. As I walked back to my seat, diploma in hand, I passed by Olivia, who hadn't even looked up from her phone to record my moment. She was typing furiously, probably texting her friends about how bored she was. What happened next wasn't planned. I didn't set out to change the dynamic with my family that day. But as I sat through the remainder of the ceremony, something crystallized inside me. A realization that I'd been seeking approval from people who would never give it, while overlooking those who already saw my worth. After the ceremony, Diane approached me with a gift bag and a wide smile. "Emma, we need to talk about your future. Not just the promotion we discussed last month, but something bigger. Can you meet me at the office tomorrow morning?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Even though it's Sunday? Olivia, suddenly interested now that someone else was showing me attention, sidled up beside me. "Promotion? Office? Emma, you didn't tell us you were moving up." Diane extended her hand. "You must be Emma's sister. I'm Diane Reynolds, Managing Director at Horizon Development Group. Your sister is one of our most promising talents." Olivia switched instantly into her charm mode, the persona she reserved for people she deemed important. "Oh, Emma's always been the smart one in the family. We're all so proud of her corporate success." I almost laughed at the blatant lie. Instead, I introduced Olivia to my colleagues, watching as she performed the role of supportive sister for this new audience. "We should celebrate," Diane suggested. "We've made a dinner reservation at Riverside Terrace. Emma, you and your sister should join us." Olivia's eyes lit up at the mention of Riverside Terrace, the most expensive restaurant in town. "I'd love to. Let me just call my parents to let them know." She stepped away to make the call, and Diane leaned closer to me. "Your sister seems interesting." "That's one word for it," I replied, then lowered my voice. "She didn't want to be here today. None of my family did." Diane's expression hardened slightly. "Then they're missing out on knowing an exceptional young woman. But that's their loss, not yours." That dinner changed everything, though I didn't realize it at the time. While Olivia charmed my colleagues with stories, many of them exaggerated or entirely fictional, about our childhood and how she'd always looked up to her brilliant big sister, Diane was quietly observing. She saw through the performance in a way no one ever had before. As dessert arrived, Diane tapped her glass for attention. "I'd like to make a toast to Emma, not just for her academic achievements today, but for something else we're announcing tomorrow." She smiled at me. "But I think I'll let that be a surprise for everyone." Olivia's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression changed. "Emma, Mom and Dad are on their way to pick me up. They said to congratulate you." She paused, then added with practiced sincerity, "This was such a special day. I'm so glad I could be here for you." I just nodded, no longer trusting myself to respond without revealing years of bottled hurt. After Olivia left, Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Your sister is a lot." "She's always been the star," I said quietly. "I'm just the reliable one." Diane shook her head. "Stars burn out, Emma. Reliable builds empires." The next morning, I met Diane at the Horizon offices as requested. Her corner office overlooked the river, morning light streaming through the windows. On her desk was a folder emblazoned with the Horizon logo. "Sit down, Emma. What I'm about to discuss with you isn't just a promotion. It's a fundamental shift in your career trajectory." She pushed the folder toward me. Inside was a property portfolio, specifically details about a foreclosed apartment complex called the Stillwater Residences. "Yesterday, while you were graduating, our company acquired this property at auction. 42 units, prime riverfront location, structurally sound but needs updating. The previous owner mismanaged it into foreclosure." I scanned the documents, immediately seeing the potential. This could be incredible with the right renovation plan. The location alone makes it valuable. "Exactly." Diane leaned forward. "Here's where you come in. The board has approved my recommendation to create a new management position for this property. You'd oversee the renovation, tenant relations, and eventual profit structure. Essentially, you'd be running your own small real estate empire within our company framework." I looked up, stunned. "Me?" I've only been here 2 years. 2 years of consistently impressive work. Your urban development degree, your attention to detail, your ability to see both the human and financial aspects of property management. You're exactly who we need. She smiled. Plus, there's a significant salary increase and a unit in the building as part of your compensation package. I don't know what to say. Say yes. The announcement goes out company-wide tomorrow. You'd start immediately. I took a deep breath, thinking about my tiny apartment with its leaking faucet and noisy neighbors, thinking about years of being overlooked, thinking about building something that was truly mine to shape. Yes, absolutely, yes. Diane extended her hand. Congratulations, Emma. Welcome to the next level. What I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that my parents had also been at that auction. The amazing investment my father had mentioned was, in fact, a bid on the Stillwater residences, the same property that was now in Horizon's portfolio, under my management. I discovered this 3 weeks later when my mother called, her voice unusually eager. Emma, we need to talk to you about something exciting. Can you come to dinner tonight? Dinner at my parents' house had always been an exercise in invisibility. I'd sit quietly while Olivia dominated the conversation, my mother encouraged her, and my father nodded approvingly. But that night, something was different. They'd set the formal dining table, opened a bottle of expensive wine, prepared my favorite meal, which they somehow remembered correctly. Emma, my father began once we were seated, we've been thinking about your future, about how hard you've been working. We're very proud of you. The words sounded rehearsed, foreign in his mouth. I sipped my wine, waiting. We know we haven't always been as supportive as we could have been, my mother added. But we want to change that, to be more involved in your life. Olivia, unusually quiet, studied her plate. What's this about? I finally asked. My father cleared his throat. Well, as you know, I've been looking into real estate investments. There was a particular property I had my eye on. The Stillwater residences. Beautiful riverfront apartments, with tremendous potential. My stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. Unfortunately, he continued, we were outbid at the auction by a corporate buyer. He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the frustration beneath. We've since learned that the buyer was Horizon Development Group, your company. Yes, I know, I said calmly. I'm managing the renovation and relaunch of the property. All three of them stared at me. You're what? My mother asked. I've been promoted to property development manager. The Stillwater is my first major project. We're completely redesigning the units, adding amenities, and rebranding it as luxury riverfront living. My father leaned forward, suddenly intensely interested in my career for the first time in my life. That's excellent, Emma. Really excellent. Perhaps we could discuss some involvement? Your mother and I have some capital we're looking to invest, and with your position there, maybe you could facilitate some sort of family partnership. And there it was. The reason. For the dinner, the wine, the sudden interest in my achievements. They wanted access to the property they'd failed to acquire themselves. I'm not authorized to bring in private investors, I said, which wasn't entirely true. Horizon has very strict protocols about conflicts of interest. But surely for family, there could be some arrangement. My father's smile didn't reach his eyes. After all, we've always supported your career. The audacity of that lie should have made me angry. Instead, I felt strangely calm, detached even. Have you? I don't recall you attending my graduation, or helping with tuition, or even asking about my promotion until you needed something. From me. My mother's face tightened. Emma, that's unfair. We've always... Always what, Mom? Always shown up? Always believed in me? Always treated me with the same enthusiasm and support you've given Olivia? I set down my wine glass carefully. Let's not rewrite history just because you suddenly see me as useful. That's not, my father began, but I cut him off. It is, and it's fine. I've made peace with my place in this family, but I won't pretend things were different just because you now want something from me. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. Olivia, to my surprise, was the one who broke it. She's right, she said quietly. We've always treated Emma like she was less important. My parents looked at her in shock. I felt the same. Olivia, that's not true, my mother protested. It is, Mom. You skipped her graduation for a real estate auction and brunch with the Petersons. You've missed most of her important moments. We all have. She turned to me. I'm sorry, Emma. I've been a terrible sister. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. It wasn't the practiced charm she used on strangers. It was something raw, something real. Why the sudden insight? I asked her directly. Olivia looked embarrassed. After your graduation dinner, I started thinking about things differently. Your boss, Diane, she sees something in you that we've all been blind to. It made me question a lot about our family dynamic. My father, impatient with this detour into emotions, tried to steer us back. Regardless of the past, we're talking about the present, about opportunities moving forward. The Stillwater could be a significant investment for all of us. No, I said simply. It can't, not through me. The conversation deteriorated after that. My father grew increasingly frustrated, my mother increasingly pleading. I excused myself before dessert, driving back to my apartment with a curious sense of lightness. For the first time, I'd spoken my truth to my family without apology, without accommodation. The next morning, I received a text from Olivia asking if we could meet for coffee. Just the two of us. I agreed, curious about her apparent change of heart. We met at a small cafe near the river, away from our usual family haunts. Olivia arrived looking uncharacteristically subdued. Thanks for meeting me, she said as she slid into the seat across from me. I wanted to talk without Mom and Dad around. About what? She twisted her coffee cup nervously. I need your help, Emma. I'm in trouble. Of course she was. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about need. What kind of trouble? Financial trouble. I maxed out my credit cards. I can't make rent next month. Mom and Dad have been helping, but after last night's dinner, Dad said I needed to show some independence for once. She looked up, eyes pleading. Could I stay with you for a while? Just until I figure things out? The old Emma would have said yes immediately. Would have made herself smaller to accommodate Olivia's chaos. But I wasn't that person anymore. No, Olivia, that won't work. Her face fell. I understand. After how I've treated you. It's not about punishing you, I interrupted. It's about boundaries. About not falling back into old patterns where I fix everything for everyone else at my own expense. Then what am I supposed to do? A hint of the old entitlement crept into her voice. Live on the street? You could get a job, a real one, not the occasional hostess shift when you feel like it. You could apply for an apartment you can actually afford. You could start taking responsibility for your life. She stared at me. Like I'd suggested she fly to the moon. That's easy for you to say. You've always had everything figured out. I laughed, genuinely amused. No, Olivia, I've just been working while you were being celebrated for existing. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I had an idea, one that could either heal something between us or confirm that some relationships can't be salvaged. The Stillwater will be accepting tenant applications next month, I said carefully. There are some smaller studio units that are quite affordable with the right income verification. If you're serious about making changes, about standing on your own, I could help you apply. But it would be strictly professional. You'd be a tenant, not my sister living rent-free. You'd really do that for me? After everything? I'd do it for any qualified applicant. You'd need to get a steady job, establish some income history. I could help you find something entry-level at Horizon if you're truly committed. Something shifted in her expression. A recognition, perhaps, that I was offering her a hand up, not a handout. A chance to redefine our relationship as equals, not as the star and her shadow. I'd like that, she said softly. I'd like to try. Over the next month, something unexpected happened. Olivia actually followed through. With my reluctant referral, she secured an administrative position at Horizon. She opened a separate bank account my parents couldn't access. She attended financial literacy workshops I found for her. She was trying, really trying. The renovation of the Stillwater progressed rapidly under my management. We preserved the historic facade while completely modernizing the interiors. Created community spaces. Added sustainable features that would reduce utility costs for residents. Every decision reflected my vision, my understanding of what makes a space not just valuable but meaningful. 2 months after our coffee meeting, Olivia qualified for one of the studio apartments. Her application, which I recused myself from reviewing, was approved by the leasing committee. She would be moving in as part of the first wave of new tenants. The day of the official reopening arrived. Horizon organized a ribbon-cutting ceremony with local media, business leaders, and of course, company executives. I stood beside Diane at the podium, preparing to make my first public address as property manager. To my surprise, my parents arrived. They hadn't responded to my invitation, but here they were, dressed formally, watching with expressions I couldn't quite read. Diane introduced me to the gathered crowd, praising my vision and leadership. As I stepped up to the microphone, I caught sight of Olivia standing to the side, wearing her Horizon employee badge, looking nervous but proud. Thank you all for being here today, I began. The Stillwater Residences represents more than just a renovation project. It represents possibility. The possibility that with the right support, the right vision, anything can be transformed. I spoke about the building's history, the careful preservation work, the community we hoped to build. I thanked the team who had worked alongside me, acknowledging each department's contribution. Today we welcome our first residents, I continued. People who will turn these spaces into homes, these units into communities. As I called the first few tenants forward to receive their welcome packages and keys, I saw my father whispering to my mother, gesturing toward the building with obvious admiration. They didn't know yet that Olivia would be among those receiving keys today. When I called her name, Olivia Chen, the look on my parents' faces was something I'll never forget. Confusion, then shock, then a dawning realization as Olivia walked forward to accept her keys from me. Congratulations, I said formally, handing her the envelope. Welcome to the Stillwater. Our eyes met, and something passed between us. An understanding, perhaps. A recognition that roles can change, that patterns can be broken, that the quiet ones sometimes build the stages rather than performing on them. My father approached immediately after the ceremony, my mother trailing behind him. Olivia is living here? Since when does she work at Horizon? He demanded, keeping his voice low but unable to hide his agitation. Since she decided to become independent, I replied calmly. She applied like any other tenant. She earned her place here. And you didn't think to tell us? My mother looked hurt, though whether from the secret or from losing her influence over Olivia, I couldn't tell. It wasn't my place to share Olivia's decisions. I gestured toward the building behind us. This is what I've been building while you were looking elsewhere. This is what happens when you underestimate the quiet one for too long. I excused myself to rejoin Diane and the other executives, leaving my parents standing there, finally. Seeing me? Truly seeing me? for perhaps the first time. Later that evening, as the new residents moved in and the excitement quieted, I found myself alone on the rooftop terrace we had created as a community space. The sunset painted the river in shades of gold and pink, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance. Olivia found me there, carrying 2 glasses of champagne from the reception. She handed me one without speaking, and we stood side by side, looking out over the view. "How does it feel?" she finally asked. "Being the boss? Having all this?" I considered the question carefully. It feels like finding my place, not the place others assigned to me, but the one I built for myself. She nodded slowly. "I'm starting to understand what that means." She turned to face me. "Thank you, not just for the apartment or the job, but for showing me what it looks like to stand in your own power." "Is that what I did?" "That's exactly what you did." She smiled, a genuine smile without the performance I'd grown used to. "You built something beautiful when no one was watching, and now they can't look away." We clinked glasses silently. Whatever happened next with my family, whether reconciliation was possible or not, I knew I'd found something more valuable than their approval. I'd found my own foundation, solid and true. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making others fail. It's succeeding so completely that they're forced to witness what they missed by not believing in you sooner. And as I stood there, keys to an entire building in my pocket and the skyline spread before me, I realized that the wall I'd once been told to stand against had become the view I now commanded. My earliest memory is of standing in the wings at Olivia's dance recital. I was 7, she was 5, and somehow she was already the center of our family's universe. I remember holding a bouquet of flowers nearly as big as my torso, waiting to hand them to her after her performance. My mother had spent the morning curling Olivia's hair into perfect ringlets, pinning tiny rhinestones to her costume while I sat quietly reading in the corner of the living room. "Emma, don't you want to take dance lessons too?" a well-meaning aunt had asked that day. Before I could answer, my mother laughed. "Oh no, Emma's not the performer type. She's our serious one." I wasn't given the chance to discover if I might have loved dance. The decision had already been made about who I was in our family, the practical one, the background character, the support system. This became the script of my childhood. While Olivia took center stage in talent shows, school plays, and family gatherings, I was assigned supporting roles: the quiet achiever, the responsible one, the one who needed less attention, less investment, less celebration. When Olivia won a regional singing competition at 12, my parents threw a party that filled our backyard with neighbors, friends, and extended family. There was a custom cake with her name in frosting, helium balloons, and a banner that read, "Our star is rising." My father made a speech about her bright future, his voice thick with pride as he held up his glass in a toast. That same week, I'd received the highest score in my grade on the state math assessment. My parents signed the notification letter and put it on the refrigerator, where it stayed for 3 days before being replaced by Olivia's competition photo. "You don't need the praise as much," my mother once explained when I quietly asked why. "My academic achievements weren't celebrated the same way. You're naturally motivated. Olivia needs the encouragement." So I learned to find motivation within myself. I studied late into the night, not for recognition, but for the quiet satisfaction of mastery. I joined clubs and volunteered in the community, building a resume. My family barely noticed, but that would eventually open doors they couldn't imagine. By high school, our roles were firmly established. Olivia was the social butterfly, invited to every party, running for homecoming queen, dating the captain of the football team. I was the student council treasurer, the math team captain, the one teachers relied on but peers often overlooked. When college application season arrived, I researched scholarships methodically, knowing that my parents' financial support would be directed primarily toward Olivia's education. I applied for every grant I qualified for, wrote essays during our lunch breaks, and worked weekends at the local bookstore to save for application fees. Emma can handle the college process herself, my father told relatives when they asked about our plans. She's always been so independent. It wasn't independence, it was adaptation to neglect. The pattern continued when I got accepted to Westlake University. While my full-ride scholarship was acknowledged with distracted congratulations at dinner, my parents immediately shifted the conversation to Olivia's summer plans. My achievement was treated as expected, almost ordinary, while Olivia's smallest efforts were celebrated as extraordinary victories. "Your sister just needs more support," my mother would say whenever I expressed frustration. "You've always been the strong one." Strength became my burden, not my attribute. It meant I was expected to need less, ask for less, receive less. It meant standing in the back of family photos because Olivia photographs better in the front. It meant hearing my accomplishments diminished with qualifiers. Emma got straight A's again, but you know how she is with books, as if academic success was somehow less impressive than Olivia's C+ in drama class. During my sophomore year at Westlake, my parents missed my induction into the Business Honors Society because Olivia had a callback for a local commercial. I sat alone at the ceremony, watching other students celebrate with their families, feeling that familiar hollow ache in my chest. "Did anyone record it?" my mother asked later. When I said no, she sighed. "That's too bad. Maybe next time you'll think ahead." There were countless next times, countless moments when I was expected to understand why my milestones were skippable, why my needs were secondary, why my presence was convenient but not essential. I started working at Horizon Development Group during my junior year, initially as an intern handling basic administrative tasks. But Diane Reynolds, the managing director, noticed something in me that my family never had: hunger, determination, and an eye for potential where others saw only problems. "You see patterns others miss," she told me after I'd reorganized a chaotic filing system that had frustrated the office for months. "That's a rare skill, Emma." I remember standing there, folder in hand, momentarily stunned by the simple act of being seen, of having my abilities acknowledged without qualifiers or comparisons. As the months passed, my responsibilities at Horizon grew. Diane invited me to sit in on client meetings, asked for my input on property assessments, and eventually assigned me to lead small projects. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be valued for exactly who I was. "You're not just detail-oriented," Diane explained during my performance review. "You understand the human element of property development. You see buildings as communities, not just structures." At home, my growing career was barely discussed. When I mentioned a successful project I'd managed, my father nodded vaguely before turning to Olivia. "Have you heard back about that hostess job at Riverside Terrace? That would be excellent for networking." Olivia's employment history was a scattered collection of briefly held positions. She worked at upscale clothing boutiques until the employee discount lost its appeal. She was a receptionist at a salon until the early mornings became too draining for her creative energy. She hosted at restaurants until a manager made a comment about her frequent tardiness. Yet each job was framed as a stepping stone to something grander, each departure as a strategic decision rather than a pattern of inconsistency. Meanwhile, my steady progression at Horizon was treated as unsurprising, even boring. "Corporate ladder climbing," my father called it dismissively. "Very practical, very Emma." I stopped sharing my work achievements with them. What was the point? In their eyes, Olivia's potential would always outshine my actual accomplishments. The contrast between my life at work and my life with family created a dissonance I couldn't reconcile. At Horizon, I was respected, valued, given opportunities to grow. At home, I was furniture, functional but unremarkable, expected to support without requiring support in return. The breaking point had been building for years, But it finally arrived on that perfect spring day, standing in my graduation gown, being told by my sister not to embarrass her, while our parents couldn't even be bothered to attend. Looking back, I realized that day was inevitable. The culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less than, of accepting scraps of attention while watching Olivia feast on unwavering support. It wasn't just about my graduation. It was about years of swallowed hurt, of achievements dismissed, of being treated as an afterthought in my own life story. But what my family never understood, what they couldn't see through the lens of their own biases, was that their neglect had forged something in me that Olivia's coddling never cultivated. Resilience, self-reliance, and the ability to build something from nothing. While they were busy applauding Olivia's potential, they missed the quiet power growing in the shadows. They didn't see me cultivating relationships with professors who later became mentors. They didn't notice me developing skills that would prove invaluable in my career. They were oblivious to the foundation I was building, brick by brick, without their help or acknowledgement. My relationship with Diane had been particularly transformative. Unlike my parents, who saw me through the distorting lens of family dynamics, Diane evaluated me solely on merit. Her mentorship wasn't clouded by comparisons to a more favored sibling or expectations based on family history. She saw my capabilities clearly and invested in them without reservation. "Most people in this industry focus on the numbers," she once told me. "But you understand that real estate is about people's lives, their communities, their sense of belonging. That's what makes you different." That conversation took place during a site visit to a property Horizon was considering rehabilitating. We stood in an empty apartment, dust motes dancing in the sunlight streaming through dirty windows. Where others might have seen only square footage and renovation costs, I saw potential for homes, for connections, for transformation. "This room could be opened up," I suggested, gesturing toward a non-load-bearing wall. "Create a flow between the kitchen and living area. People want to cook and still be part of the conversation, still see their kids doing homework or their friends sitting on the couch." Diane nodded, making notes. "What else?" "The windows are a selling point, but they need better insulation. And this floor plan repeats through the building, right? We could create variations, some with home office nooks, others with expanded kitchen storage. Let people choose what suits their lives. This is why I want you involved in these discussions," Diane said. "You think about how people will live in these spaces, not just how we'll profit from them." That moment stayed with me, not just for the professional validation, but for the stark contrast it presented to my family dynamic. At work, my perspective was sought out, my insights valued. At home, my voice was background noise, easily tuned out in favor of Olivia's louder, more demanding presence. As graduation approached, I poured myself into work, finding solace in the environment where I was valued. I stayed late, volunteered for additional projects, and immersed myself in learning every aspect of property development and management. Diane noticed, of course. "You're being groomed for advancement," she told me one evening as we reviewed projections for a commercial property. "But don't burn yourself out. There's more to life than work." I remember looking at her, puzzled by the concern in her voice. "I like being here," I said simply. "It feels right." She studied me for a moment. "Is everything okay at home, Emma?" The question caught me off guard. I'd become so accustomed to compartmentalizing my family dynamics that having someone notice the disconnect was jarring. "Home is complicated," I admitted. "My family and I have different priorities." Diane nodded, not pushing further. "Just remember that your worth isn't tied to productivity. You matter as a person, not just as an employee." That conversation revealed another truth I'd been avoiding. My immersion in work wasn't just about career advancement. It was about finding somewhere I belonged, somewhere I was valued for exactly who I was, rather than diminished for who I wasn't. In the weeks leading up to graduation, I tried one last time to bridge the gap with my family. I sent thoughtful invitations, scheduled the ceremony months in advance, even called to confirm they had the date marked on their calendars. "Of course we'll be there," my mother assured me. "It's a big day." I allowed myself to hope, briefly, that this milestone would be different, that they would see the significance of what I'd accomplished, putting myself through college, maintaining highest honors while working, securing a promising career path, that they would finally see me. That hope crumbled with each excuse, each changing plan, each indication that once again my achievement was secondary to Olivia's social calendar, to my father's business interests, to anything and everything that wasn't me. When Olivia showed up at the ceremony, it wasn't to support me, but because her other plans had fallen through. Her warning, "Don't embarrass us," was the final confirmation of what I'd always known but tried to deny. In my family's narrative, I was never the protagonist. I was a supporting character at best, a potential source of embarrassment at worst. The gap between how my colleagues treated me that day and how my family did was impossible to ignore. Diane and the team from Horizon came with signs and genuine enthusiasm. They cheered when my name was called. They planned a celebration dinner. They saw my achievement as significant, worthy of recognition. Standing in that auditorium, watching Olivia scroll through her phone instead of paying attention to the ceremony she'd supposedly come to witness, I felt something settle inside me. A quiet certainty that things couldn't continue as they had been. That I deserved more than to be an afterthought in my own life story. I didn't know then how dramatically things would change in the coming months. I couldn't have predicted the reversal of power that would transform my relationship with my family, particularly with Olivia. But looking back, I can see that graduation day wasn't just the culmination of my academic journey. It was the beginning of my independence from patterns that had defined my entire life. The historical pattern of being overlooked, undervalued, and taken for granted had created in me a hunger not just for success, but for recognition. Not the shallow attention my parents lavished on Olivia, but the deeper acknowledgement of my worth as a person, my contributions, my place in the world. What my family failed to realize was that their neglect hadn't diminished me. It had strengthened me in ways that would ultimately reshape our entire dynamic. They had created the conditions for their own reckoning by consistently underestimating the quiet one, the practical one, the one they thought needed less. They were about to discover how wrong they'd been all along. The morning after my graduation, I woke to sunlight streaming through my apartment blinds, feeling strangely liberated. For the first time in my life, I had no expectations to meet, no family obligations to fulfill. I had walked away from the graduation dinner, declining to join Olivia and my colleagues at Riverside Terrace, needing space to process the day's motions. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Diane and a text. "When you're ready to talk about your future, I'm here. No rush. Proud of you regardless." No demands, no guilt, just support. The contrast with my family's approach couldn't have been more stark. I made coffee and sat by my small window, watching the city wake up. My apartment was modest but functional, all I could afford while putting myself through school. The furniture was mismatched, most of it secondhand or rescued from curbs on moving day. But it was mine, a space I'd created without family help, a testament to my self-reliance. I called Diane back just after 9 a.m., expecting to leave a voicemail on a Sunday. She answered on the second ring. "Emma, good morning. How are you feeling today?" "Better," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. Yesterday was complicated. Family often is. Her voice was neutral, free of judgment. "Are you up for coming into the office today? There's something I want to discuss with you." That was unusual. Horizon's offices were typically closed on Sundays, the corporate culture respecting work-life boundaries more than most in the industry. "Is everything okay?" "More than okay, but it's better discussed in person. Say, 11 a.m.? I agreed, curiosity overriding my desire for a quiet recovery day. The Horizon Development Group offices occupied 3 floors of a sleek glass building downtown, overlooking the river. On weekdays, the space hummed with activity, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the perpetual movement of people engaged in meaningful work. On Sundays, it was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the soft hum of the climate control system. Diane was waiting in her corner office, a space I'd been in countless times, but that still impressed me with its understated elegance. Floor to ceiling. Windows offered panoramic views of the city. Her desk, a massive slab of polished walnut, was cleared except for a single folder bearing the Horizon logo. "Sit down, Emma." She gestured to one of the leather chairs facing her desk. "Coffee?" I declined politely, too intrigued by the unusual meeting to care about caffeine. Diane studied me for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Yesterday, while you were graduating, I was at a property auction. One I've been planning for months." This surprised me. Diane had never mentioned missing my graduation for an auction. She'd been there, front row, cheering louder than anyone. "After the ceremony," she clarified, seeing my confusion. "While you were dealing with your family situation, I slipped away. There was a particular property coming up that couldn't wait." She pushed the folder across the desk. "The Stillwater Residences." I opened it, scanning the documents inside. The Stillwater was a historic apartment complex on the riverfront, built in the 1930s with Art Deco touches that had once made it the most prestigious address in Riverside. Recent decades had seen it decline under mismanagement, falling into disrepair and eventually foreclosure. 42 units, I noted, flipping through the property assessment. Structurally sound but extensively outdated. Prime location, though. Exactly. Diane leaned forward. "The bones are good. The views are exceptional. With the right renovation plan, it could be the crown jewel of our residential portfolio." I continued reading, noting the purchase price, significantly below market value due to the foreclosure. "This is an incredible acquisition. Congratulations." "Thank you. But that's not why I called you in today." She stood, moving to look. Out the window. "Emma, I've been watching your work for 2 years now. Your attention to detail, your vision for spaces, your understanding of both the financial and human aspects of property development. You see things others miss." I waited, unsure where this was heading. "The board has approved my recommendation to create a new position. Property Development Manager for the Stillwater. Full renovation oversight, tenant relations, marketing strategy, the works." She turned to face me. "I want you for the role." I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "Me? But I just graduated. There are senior project managers with years more experience." Experience isn't always measured in years. Sometimes it's measured in insight, in vision. She returned to her desk. "You have both, along with the technical skills we've been honing. Your urban development degree gives you the theoretical foundation. Your time here has given you the practical knowledge." "This would be a massive responsibility," I said carefully. "The Stillwater isn't just another property, it's historic. It could redefine the riverfront area." "Exactly why I want you on it. You understand the balance between preservation and progress. You see buildings as communities, not just assets." The confidence in her voice was unwavering, so different from my family's persistent doubt. I felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. "There's a significant salary increase," Diane continued. "And, this part's not typical, a unit in the building itself as part of your compensation package. Once renovations are complete, you'd live on site. It creates continuity, shows our commitment to the property's quality." Living in a building like the Stillwater had always been a distant dream. The thought of not just working there, but residing. In one of those historic apartments with their high ceilings and river views was almost too much to process. "Why me?" I asked finally, needing to understand. Really? Diane's expression softened. Because you deserve it. Because you've earned it. Because I believe you'll turn that building into something extraordinary. She paused. And because I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have your potential overlooked by the people who should have seen it first. I felt a lump forming in my throat, unexpected emotion rising to the surface. I can't promise it will be easy, she added. There will be challenges, budget constraints, unexpected structural issues, demanding residents, the scrutiny that comes with a high-profile project. But I believe you can handle all of it. I looked back at the folder, at the photographs of the Stillwater's faded grandeur, and saw what it could become. What I could help it become. Yes, I said quietly, then with more confidence. Yes, I accept. Diane smiled, extending her hand across the desk. Congratulations, Property Development Manager Chen. The announcement goes out company-wide tomorrow. You'll start immediately. As we shook hands, I couldn't have known how this moment would reshape not just my career, but my entire relationship with my family. I couldn't have known that the Stillwater would become the unexpected leverage that would force them to finally see me clearly. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I was assigned an office with a door, a significant upgrade from my previous cubicle. My team expanded to include 2 assistant managers, a dedicated accountant, and a marketing coordinator. Meetings filled my calendar as we developed the renovation plan, created budgets, and interviewed contractors. I threw myself into the work, often staying until long after others had gone home. The Stillwater's blueprints covered my walls. I researched its history, finding photographs from its heyday, stories from former residents, details about the architectural elements that made it special. You're becoming the building's historian as well as its manager, Marcus from accounting joked when he found me surrounded by archived newspapers one evening. To move it forward, I need to understand where it's been, I explained. Every decision needs to honor its past while creating its future. He nodded, impressed. This is why Diane picked you. Most people would just gut it and start over. I was so consumed with the project that I barely noticed the silence from my family. 3 weeks passed without a call or text from any of them, unusual even by our distant standards. I assumed they were giving me space after the graduation. Day tensions. Or perhaps they were simply continuing their pattern of forgetting my existence when there was nothing they needed from me. Then my mother called on a Tuesday evening as I was reviewing contractor bids in my apartment. Emma, we need to talk to you about something exciting. Can you come to dinner tonight? Her voice had that forced brightness I recognized from childhood, the tone she used when trying to create enthusiasm for something that benefited everyone but me. Tonight? It's already 7 p.m., Mom. Oh, we're just sitting down now. Your father grilled steaks. Your favorite. My favorite was actually pasta primavera, something she would have known if she'd ever paid attention to my preferences. But the unusual effort intrigued me. What's this about? It's better discussed in person. Family matters. A pause. Please, Emma. It's important. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I can be there in 30 minutes. My parents' house was in an older, established neighborhood, not extravagant, but solidly upper middle class, with well-maintained lawns and tasteful landscaping. The home I'd grown up in but never quite felt I belonged to. Walking up the familiar driveway, I noticed my father had washed and waxed his car, something he only did for special occasions. The dining room lights were on, silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Whatever this dinner was about, they were making an unusual effort. My mother answered the door wearing a dress I hadn't seen before, her hair freshly styled, pearl earrings, catching the light. Emma, you're here. Come in, come in. The formal dining room was indeed set with their best china, candles lit, wine already poured. My father stood as I entered, an uncharacteristic gesture of respect. Olivia was seated at her usual place, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "You look well," my father said. Another departure from his typical greeting of barely looking up. From his phone. "Professional. The working world suits you." I took my seat cautiously, feeling like I'd walked onto a stage without being given the script. "Thank you. It's been busy." "We've heard," my mother said, serving the meal with a flourish. "Your graduation, your new position, we're very proud." The words sounded rehearsed, foreign in her mouth. In 24 years, I could count on one hand the times she'd expressed pride in my achievements without immediately pivoting to Olivia's latest venture. "How did you hear about my promotion?" I asked carefully. I don't remember mentioning. A glance passed between my parents. Olivia studied her plate with unusual intensity. "Word gets around," my father said vaguely. "Riverside is a small city in many ways, particularly in business circles." The conversation through the main course was stiffly polite. Questions about my apartment, comments about the weather, careful avoidance of the graduation day incident. Not once did they mention their absence or Olivia's behavior. It was as if that day had been erased from the family narrative, like so many of my significant moments before it. It wasn't until dessert, my mother had made tiramisu, another dish, I'd never expressed particular fondness for, that my father finally reached the purpose of the evening. "Emma," he began, setting down his fork with deliberate care. "We've been thinking about your future, about how hard you've been working. We're very proud of you." The repetition of pride, twice in one evening after years of its absence, set alarm bells ringing in my mind. "We know we haven't always been as supportive as we could have been," my mother added, reaching across to pat my hand. "But we want to change that, to be more involved in your life." Olivia remained uncharacteristically silent, watching this performance with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. "What's this about?" I finally asked, setting down my own fork. "Really?" My father cleared his throat. "Well, as you know, I've been looking into real estate investments. There was a particular property I had my eye on, the Stillwater Residences. Beautiful riverfront apartments with tremendous potential." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. The unusual dinner invitation, the excessive politeness, the rehearsed expressions of pride. "Unfortunately," he continued, "we were outbid at the auction, by a corporate buyer." He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the frustration beneath. "We've since learned that the buyer was Horizon Development Group. Your company." I kept my expression neutral. "Yes, I know." "You know?" My mother's surprise seemed genuine. "I'm managing the renovation and relaunch of the property," I said calmly. "It's my primary project." All three of them stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You're what?" my father asked. "I've been promoted to property development manager. The Stillwater is my first major project. We're completely redesigning the units, adding amenities, and rebranding it as luxury riverfront living." My father leaned forward, suddenly intensely interested in my career for the first time in my life. That's excellent, Emma. Really excellent." His tone shifted, becoming warmer, more ingratiating. "Perhaps we could discuss some involvement? Your mother and I have some capital we're looking to invest, and with your position there, maybe you could facilitate some sort of family partnership." And there it was. The reason for the dinner, the wine, the sudden interest in my achievements. They wanted access to the property they'd failed to acquire themselves. They wanted to use my position for their benefit after years of dismissing my potential. "I'm not authorized to bring in private investors," I said, which wasn't entirely true. Horizon has very strict protocols about conflicts of interest. But surely for family, there could be some arrangement. My father's smile didn't reach his eyes. "After all, we've always supported your career." The audacity of that lie should have made me angry. Instead, I felt strangely calm, seeing with perfect clarity the transaction they were attempting. Have you? I don't recall you attending my graduation, or helping with tuition, or even asking about my promotion until you needed something from me. My mother's face tightened. Emma, that's unfair. We've always what, Mom? Always shown up? Always believed in me? Always treated me with the same enthusiasm and support you've given Olivia? I set down my napkin carefully. Let's not rewrite history just because you suddenly see me as useful. That's not, my father began, but I cut him off. It is, and it's fine. I've made peace with my place in this family, but I won't pretend. Things were different just because you now want something from me. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. Olivia, to my surprise, was the one who broke it. She's right, she said quietly. We've always treated Emma like she was less important. My parents looked at her in shock. I felt the same. Olivia, that's not true, my mother protested. It is, Mom. You skipped her graduation for a real estate auction and brunch with the Petersons? You've missed most of her important moments. We all have. She turned to me. I'm sorry, Emma. I've been a terrible sister. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. It wasn't the practiced charm she used on strangers. It was something raw, something real. Why the sudden insight? I asked her directly. Olivia looked embarrassed. After your graduation dinner, I started thinking about things differently. Your boss, Diane, she sees something in you that we've all been blind to. It made me question a lot about our family dynamic. My father, impatient with this detour into emotions, tried to steer us back. Regardless of the past, we're talking about the present, about opportunities moving forward. The Stillwater could be a significant investment for all of us. No, I said simply. It can't. Not through me. I saw it then. The flicker of calculation behind my father's eyes. The realization that the daughter he'd always taken for granted now held something he wanted. Something he couldn't access without my cooperation. For the first time in my life, I had leverage. Unexpected, unplanned, but undeniably real. The quiet one, the afterthought, the reliable background character suddenly stood at the center of something they desperately wanted to be part of. It wasn't a position I'd sought or schemed for. It had come through my own merit, my own work, my own path built without their support or guidance. And that made it all the more powerful. In that moment, looking at their faces, my father's frustrated calculation, my mother's brittle smile, Olivia's unexpected contrition, I understood that the dynamic between us had fundamentally shifted. The balance of power had tilted, not through confrontation or demand, but through the simple fact of my success in a world they'd never bothered to notice. They wanted access to the Stillwater, to its prestige, its potential profit, its status as the next big property development in Riverside. But the path to all of that now ran through me, through the daughter they'd consistently underestimated, the one they'd taught to stand against the wall, out of the frame, waiting patiently for scraps of acknowledgement that rarely came. As I declined their thinly veiled request and drove home that evening, I felt neither vindication nor satisfaction. Just a quiet certainty that things between us had changed forever. What I didn't realize then was how this unexpected leverage would continue to reshape our relationship in the weeks to come, how it would force confrontations long avoided, truths long denied, and eventually, transformations none of us could have predicted. 3 days after the uncomfortable family dinner, I received an email from my father. The subject line read, "Stillwater discussion," as if our previous conversation had been a preliminary negotiation rather than my firm refusal. The message itself was brief, businesslike. "Emma, I've been thinking about our talk. Perhaps I approached it incorrectly. Let's meet for lunch, just the two of us. There are aspects of property development I believe I could advise you on given my experience. My treat." The Oak Room tomorrow, 1 p.m. The Oak Room was the most expensive restaurant downtown, where business deals were made over $200 bottles of wine, and handshake agreements carried the weight of contracts. It was a strategic choice, public enough that I couldn't easily refuse, without seeming unreasonable, upscale enough to suggest this was serious business, not just family drama. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because I needed time to process my own boundaries. I'd spent my entire life accommodating my family's expectations, adjusting my needs to fit into the negative space around Olivia's ever-expanding presence. The reflex to say yes, to smooth things over, to make myself smaller was deeply ingrained. By afternoon, he'd left a voicemail. Emma, confirming our lunch tomorrow. I've taken the liberty of reserving a private dining room. I have some connections. There. The subtle reminder of his own business influence wasn't lost on me. I let this go unanswered as well, focusing instead on contractor meetings for the Stillwater. We were finalizing decisions about which original elements to preserve: the Art Deco lobby fixtures, the distinctive tile work in the entryways, the wrought iron balconies, and which to modernize. Each choice required balancing history with functionality, aesthetics with practicality. It was absorbing work, far more meaningful than navigating family politics. At 12:45 the next day, my phone rang again. My father, calling from what I assumed was the Oak Room, his voice tight with controlled irritation. Emma, I'm waiting for you. The chef has prepared something special. Are you running late? I'm not coming, Dad. My voice was calm, steadier than I expected. I didn't agree to lunch. A pause. You could have let me know. This is unprofessional. The word choice was telling. Unprofessional rather than inconsiderate. He was approaching this as a business matter, not a family one. I was clear at dinner. I can't and won't involve you in the Stillwater project. This isn't just about the project. This is about us, about rebuilding our relationship. I almost laughed at the transparency of it. Is it? Because your email only mentioned Stillwater. Your voicemail only confirmed the reservation. Not once did you mention wanting to reconnect on a personal level. That was implied, he said, his tone hardening. But if you want everything spelled out, fine. I acknowledge we haven't been as present in your life as we should have been. I want to fix that. Starting with lunch. Starting with a lunch where you'd pitch your investment ideas for the property I manage. Don't be difficult, Emma. Family and business can coexist. I've taught you that your entire life. Had he? What he'd actually taught me was that business always came before family, unless the family member was Olivia, whose needs superseded everything. I have a meeting in 5 minutes, I said, which was true. We can talk another time if you want to discuss our relationship without bringing the Stillwater into it. He hung up without responding. I sat at my desk, waiting for the guilt to set in, the familiar weight of having disappointed my parents. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange lightness, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for decades. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Dad's on the warpath, says you stood him up. What happened? I was surprised she was asking my side, rather than automatically taking his. He scheduled a lunch I never agreed to, wanted to discuss advising me on the Stillwater. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, he's obsessed with that building, has been since before the auction, thinks it could have made him a player in commercial real estate. This was new, Olivia offering insider information rather than closing ranks against me. Before I could respond, she sent another text. Can we get coffee sometime? Just us. I meant what I said at dinner. I stared at the message, unsure what to make of this shift. Olivia had never sought out one-on-one time with me unless she needed something. Money, a ride, an excuse for our parents. But her tone seemed genuine, lacking the manipulative charm she typically employed when working an angle. "Sure," I responded after careful consideration. "This weekend? Saturday morning? That new place on Jefferson?" We settled on a time, and I returned to my work, pushing family matters aside for the moment. The Stillwater demanded my full attention: budget approvals, permit applications, marketing strategy meetings. I was determined to prove Diane's faith in me was well placed, to show that I was more than capable of handling this level of responsibility. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find my mother waiting in the reception area, looking distinctly out of place among the modern minimalist decor in her floral blouse and pearl earrings. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She stood, clutching her handbag nervously. "I was hoping we could talk. Your father is very upset after yesterday." The receptionist was watching with professional discretion, but I could sense her curiosity. "Let's go to my office." As I led her through the open workspace, I noticed heads turning, curious glances following us. My family had never visited Horizon before, had never shown interest in this significant part of my life. Their sudden appearances now weren't going unnoticed. My new office was smaller than Diane's, but still impressive. Corner location, glass, walls, currently frosted for privacy, my name on the door with Property Development Manager underneath. I watched my mother taking it in, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite identify. "This is nice," she said as I closed the door behind us. "Very professional." "Thank you. Please, sit down." I gestured to the chairs facing my desk, taking my own seat. "What can I help you with, Mom?" She seemed thrown by my businesslike tone. "Emma, honey, this isn't a business meeting. I'm your mother. You're here about Dad's lunch, which was explicitly about business, at my workplace, during working hours," she sighed, placing her handbag carefully on her lap. "Your father means well. He's just not very good at separating his business interests from his personal ones. He never has been." "I'm aware. He feels you're shutting him out, shutting all of us out." She leaned forward. "We're trying, Emma. Can't you see that?" "Trying to what, exactly?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're trying to gain access to a property development you couldn't acquire yourselves. Not trying. To repair our relationship." "That's not fair. We're proud of you, of what you've accomplished." Her voice took on a wounded tone. "We've always supported your independence." I could have argued, pointed out that what they called supporting my independence was actually neglect masked as respect for my self-sufficiency. But what would be the point? They'd never acknowledged their preferential treatment of Olivia. They weren't going to start now. "Mom, I need to be clear about something. My position here, my management of the Stillwater, these aren't family matters. They're professional achievements I've earned through my own merit. I won't compromise them by mixing in family dynamics." "No one's asking you to compromise anything," she protested. "We just want to be included, to share in your success." "The way I was included in Olivia's successes? The way you shared in my academic achievements or my graduation?" Her face flushed. "That's different. You've always been more self-contained. You never seemed to need our involvement the way Olivia did." It was the same justification I'd heard my entire life, that my emotional self-sufficiency somehow justified their emotional neglect, that because I'd adapted to their indifference, I deserved it. "I have a meeting in 15 minutes, I said, deliberately not engaging with her rationalization. "Is there anything else we need to discuss?" She looked momentarily lost, as if the conversation had veered from a script she'd prepared. "Your father wanted me to ask if there's any way you might reconsider about the Stillwater investment." At least she was being honest now. "No, and I'd appreciate if you both stopped asking. It puts me in an uncomfortable position professionally." "I understand." She didn't. Not really, but she recognized the finality in my tone. She gathered her handbag, standing with the slightly wounded dignity that had always made me question my own boundaries. "Will we see you Sunday? For family dinner?" The weekly family dinner I'd been skipping for months without them noticing. "I'm not sure my schedule will allow it." "Please try. Olivia will be there." As if her sister's presence had ever been the draw rather than the deterrent. After she left, I sat at my desk, feeling the familiar emotional exhaustion that family interactions always produced. But beneath, it was something new, a sense of having held my ground, of having maintained boundaries that would once have crumbled under the weight of familial expectation. My assistant knocked lightly on the doorframe. "Everything okay?" Your mother seemed intense. I smiled reassuringly. "Everything's fine. Family business." "Speaking of business, are we ready for the contractor meeting?" The rest of the week passed in a flurry of activity. The Stillwater renovation was moving into high gear, demolition beginning on the internal spaces that would be reconfigured, specialists assessing the historic elements we planned to restore, marketing team developing the branding that would position the property in the luxury market. I threw myself into the work, finding satisfaction in the tangible progress, in creating something beautiful and meaningful from a neglected space. Each decision I made felt like an affirmation of my own vision, my own capability, independent of my family's validation or involvement. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed casually for coffee with Olivia, unsure what to expect from this unprecedented one-on-one meeting. Part of me suspected it would be another attempt to circumvent my professional boundaries. Perhaps my parents had enlisted her as a softer approach after their more direct attempts had failed. The cafe on Jefferson was new, trendy, with exposed brick walls and local art displayed for sale. Olivia was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table, looking uncharacteristically subdued in jeans and a simple sweater rather than her usual attention-grabbing outfits. "Hey," she said as I sat down across from her. "Thanks for coming." "Of course." I studied her, noting the absence of her usual performative confidence. "Is everything okay?" She twisted her coffee cup nervously. "Not really." "I need your help, Emma. I'm in trouble." Of course. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about need. The familiar disappointment settled in my chest. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial trouble. I maxed out my credit cards. I can't make rent next month." She looked up, eyes pleading. "Mom and Dad have been helping, but after that dinner, Dad said I needed to show some independence for once." His words. I absorbed this information, considering its implications. My father, frustrated by his inability to access the Stillwater, through me, was now withdrawing support from Olivia. It seemed I wasn't the only one experiencing consequences from my newfound boundaries. "Could I stay with you for a while? Just until I figure things out?" The old Emma would have said yes, immediately, would have made herself smaller to accommodate Olivia's chaos, rearranged her own life to fix her sister's problems. But I wasn't that person anymore. "No, Olivia, that won't work." Her face fell. "I understand. After how I've treated you—" "It's not about punishing you," I interrupted. "It's about boundaries, about not falling back into old patterns where I fix everything for everyone else at my own expense." "Then what am I supposed to do?" A hint of the old entitlement crept into her voice. "Live on the street?" "You could get a job, a real one. Not the occasional hostess shift when you feel like it. You could apply for an apartment you can actually afford. You could start taking responsibility for your life." She stared at me like I'd suggested she fly to the moon. "That's easy for you to say. You've always had everything figured out." I laughed, genuinely amused by the misconception that had shaped so much of our relationship. "No, Olivia. I've just been working while you were being celebrated for existing." The bluntness of my response seemed to startle her. She fell silent, turning her coffee cup slowly between her hands, avoiding my gaze. "I meant what I said at dinner," she said finally, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "About being sorry, about how we've treated you. Why now, after all these years?" She looked up, and for once her expression was completely unguarded. "Honestly, because I've never seen you stand up to Dad before. You've always been the one who went along, who made things easier for everyone else. When you refused him at dinner, when you didn't show up for his lunch, it was like seeing a different person, someone stronger than I realized. It wasn't the answer I'd expected. There was no manipulation in her tone, no practiced charm, just a raw honesty that felt new between us. "And yes, I need help," she continued. "I'm not denying that. But it's more than that. Watching you build this career, this life, while I'm still bouncing between dead-end jobs and relying on Mom and Dad's handouts, it's made me question a lot about the paths we've both taken." I studied her, trying to gauge the sincerity beneath the words. Olivia had always been the performer in the family, capable of manufacturing emotion when it served her purposes, but there was something different about her now, a vulnerability that couldn't be faked, at least not convincingly. "I don't need your apartment," she said after a moment. That was me falling back into old patterns too, expecting you to fix my problems. She straightened slightly. "What I could really use is your advice on how to stand on my own the way you've always done." The request caught me off guard. Olivia had never asked for my guidance before, had never acknowledged that I might have wisdom she lacked. As I sat there, considering her request, an idea began to form, one that could either heal something between us or confirm that some relationships can't be salvaged. "The Stillwater will be accepting tenant applications next month," I said carefully. "There are some smaller studio units that are quite affordable with the right income verification. If you're serious about making changes, about standing on your own, I could help you apply. But it would be strictly professional. You'd be a tenant, not my sister living rent-free." Her eyes widened. "You'd really do that for me? After everything?" "I'd do it for any qualified applicant. You'd need to get a steady job, establish some income history. I could help you find something entry-level at Horizon if you're truly committed." Something shifted in her expression. A recognition, perhaps, that I was offering her a hand up, not a handout. A chance to redefine our relationship as equals, not as the star and her shadow. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like to try." That coffee meeting marked the beginning of a subtle but significant shift in my relationship with Olivia. She didn't transform overnight. Years of entitlement and preferential treatment couldn't be undone in a single conversation. But for the first time, there was acknowledgement of the imbalance that had defined our interactions and a tentative step toward something healthier. My parents, however, were not so quick to adjust to the new reality. The following week brought increasingly direct attempts to bypass my professional boundaries. My father sent an email to Diane directly, introducing himself as a local investor and property developer with a personal connection to the Stillwater project through my daughter. He requested a meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. Diane forwarded it to me with a single question: "How would you like me to handle this?" The fact that she consulted me rather than responding independently was yet another affirmation of her respect for my autonomy. "I'll address it," I replied, then drafted a formal professional response that I sent from my own email account. "Dear Mr. Chen, thank you for your interest in the Stillwater residences. As previously discussed, Horizon Development Group is not seeking additional investors for this project. All decisions regarding external partnerships fall under the purview of our executive board, not individual project managers. I would appreciate your respecting the professional boundaries I've established. Regards, Emma Chen, Property Development Manager." The email felt both terrifying and liberating to send, a clear statement that I would not allow family connections to compromise my professional integrity. I half expected an angry phone call in response, but instead received a terse reply. Understood. We'll explore other investment opportunities. It should have felt like a victory, this apparent acceptance of my boundaries. But I knew my father too well to believe he'd given up so easily. He was regrouping, recalculating, looking for another angle of approach. The quiet consequences of my newfound leverage were still unfolding, reshaping our family dynamic in ways none of us had anticipated. The most significant shift, however, was occurring with Olivia. True to her word, she applied for an administrative position at Horizon, not in my department, which would have created a conflict of interest, but in the Human Resources Division. To my surprise, she showed up for the interview on time, professionally dressed, with a resume I'd helped her revise to highlight her organizational skills rather than her series of abandoned opportunities. She got the job. Entry-level, modest salary, but a legitimate start. Each morning she arrived at the Horizon offices 15 minutes early. Each evening she stayed until her work was complete. Her supervisor reported that she was diligent, quick to learn, receptive to feedback, qualities I'd never associated with my spontaneous attention-seeking sister. It's different when you're actually being evaluated on your merit, she told me during a quick lunch in the company cafeteria. Not just praised for showing up. It's harder, but it feels more real. Watching her navigate this new terrain, structured, work environment, professional expectations, accountability, was like seeing a stranger wearing my sister's face. A stranger I might actually be able to respect, even like. Within a month, she had saved enough for the security deposit on one of the Stillwater studio apartments. Her application, which I recused myself from reviewing to avoid any appearance of favoritism, was approved by the leasing committee based on her new employment and the positive reference from her supervisor. She would be moving in as part of the first wave of tenants, not because of family connections, but because she'd met the same criteria as every other resident. The quiet consequence of my refused leverage had become, unexpectedly, a path to genuine independence for the sister, who had always been defined by her dependence. My parents, when they learned of Olivia's new job and apartment, reacted with a mixture of pride and confusion. They were glad to see her taking responsibility, but seemed bewildered that these changes had occurred under my influence rather than theirs. I never thought Olivia would be interested in office work, my mother commented during a rare phone call. She's always been such a free spirit. She's always been capable of more than you expected, I replied. You just never required it of her. The subtle criticism hung between us, acknowledged but not addressed. Another quiet consequence of the shifting balance between us, my newfound willingness to speak uncomfortable truths, her gradual recognition that she could no longer dismiss my perspective. As the Stillwater's renovation progressed and its reopening approached, I found myself in the unexpected position of having leveraged not only my professional achievement, but also my family's dynamics themselves, not through manipulation or demand, but through the simple, powerful act of maintaining boundaries. The quiet consequences continued to ripple outward, transforming not just how my family saw me, but how they saw themselves, and perhaps most importantly, how I saw myself in relation to them. The day of the Stillwater's official reopening arrived bright and clear, perfect weather for the ribbon-cutting ceremony Horizon had planned. Standing in my apartment that morning, I smoothed down the tailored blazer I'd chosen for the occasion. A far cry from the practical, forgettable clothes I'd worn throughout my youth to avoid drawing attention away from Olivia. Today, I wanted to be seen. The renovated building gleamed in the morning light, its historic facade restored to its original grandeur, while the interiors had been completely transformed. Every decision, from the preserved Art Deco details to the modern amenities we'd added, reflected my vision. My name was on the project documentation, my ideas woven into every corner of the revitalized space. Diane met me at the entrance, clipboard in hand, looking calm despite the chaos of last-minute preparations. "Ready for your moment?" she asked, eyes twinkling. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, surveying the gathering crowd of media representatives, local business leaders, and potential residents. A temporary stage had been set up near the entrance, with chairs arranged for the ceremony. Your family confirmed they're coming, Diane mentioned casually. I put them in the reserved section, front row. My pulse quickened. All of them? Your parents and sister. Is that a problem? I considered the question. A month ago, the thought of my family witnessing this professional milestone might have filled me with anxiety, fears of being overlooked, undervalued, or somehow diminished even in my moment of achievement. Now, I felt something different. Not vindication, exactly, but a quiet confidence that their presence or absence couldn't define the significance of what I'd accomplished. No, I said finally. No problem at all. As the ceremony began, I spotted them in the audience, my father in his best suit, my mother perfectly coiffed, both wearing expressions I couldn't quite read. Beside them sat Olivia, not in her usual attention-grabbing outfit, but in professional attire similar to what she wore to work each day. She caught my eye and gave me a small, genuine smile. Diane introduced me to the gathered crowd, praising my vision and leadership throughout the renovation process. As I stepped up to the microphone, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu, reminiscent of graduation day, but with one crucial difference. This time, I wasn't being evaluated against someone else's standards or expectations. This achievement was entirely my own. Thank you all for being here today, I began. The Stillwater Residences represents more than just a renovation project. It represents possibility. The possibility that with the right support, the right vision, anything can be transformed. I spoke about the building's history, the careful preservation work, the community we hope to build. I thanked the team who had worked alongside me, acknowledging each department's contribution. My voice was steady, confident, no longer the quiet, accommodating tone I'd adopted in family settings. Today, we welcome our first residents, I continued. People who will turn these spaces into homes, these units into communities. As I called the first few tenants forward to receive their welcome packages and keys, I saw my father whispering to my mother, gesturing toward the building with obvious admiration. They didn't know yet that Olivia would be among those receiving keys. Today, I'd honored her request to keep her application process private from our parents. When I called her name, Olivia Chen, the look on my parents' faces was something I'll never forget. Confusion, then shock, then a dawning realization as Olivia walked forward to accept her keys from me. Congratulations, I said formally, handing her the envelope. Welcome to the Stillwater. Our eyes met, and something passed between us, an understanding perhaps, a recognition that roles can change, that patterns can be broken, that the quiet ones sometimes build the stages, rather than performing on them. After the ceremony, as champagne was served and guests toured the model units, my father approached me. For once, he didn't lead with a demand or suggestion. Instead, he simply said, "I'm proud of what you've created here, Emma." Simple words, but ones I'd waited decades to hear without qualification or comparison. I nodded, accepting the praise without diminishing it, another small transformation in itself. And Olivia, he continued, glancing toward where she stood, chatting with colleagues from Horizon. You helped her get the job? I helped her prepare for the interview, I clarified. She earned the position herself, and the apartment too. She met all the same requirements as any other tenant. He studied me with new eyes, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. You've both changed. We've grown, I corrected gently, into who we always could have been, given the chance. He absorbed this, nodding slowly. Your mother and I have been discussing things about how we've approached parenting, about the imbalances we created without realizing it. I doubted the without realizing it part, but I appreciated the acknowledgement nonetheless. That's good to hear. We'd like to have dinner sometime, all of us, to talk about moving forward differently. It wasn't an apology, not explicitly, but it was a beginning, a tentative step towards something new. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. But it needs to be different this time. Real. Conversation, not just surface politeness. Agreed. He extended his hand formally, as if we were concluding a business meeting. Then, seemingly reconsidering, he opened his arms instead. May I? The hug was awkward, unfamiliar. My father had never been demonstrative, but genuine. As we separated, I caught Diane watching from across the room, a small smile on her face. That evening, after the crowds had dispersed and the new residents were settling in, I found myself alone on the rooftop terrace we had created as a community space. The sunset painted the river in shades of gold and pink, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance. Olivia found me there, carrying 2 glasses of champagne salvaged from the reception. She handed me one without speaking, and we stood side by side, looking out over the view. How does it feel? She finally asked. Being the boss? Having all this? I considered the question carefully. It feels like finding my place. Not the place others assigned to me, but the one I built for myself. She nodded slowly. I'm starting to understand what that means. She turned to face me. Thank you. Not just for the apartment or the job recommendation, but for showing me what it looks like to stand in your own power. Is that what I did? That's exactly what you did. She smiled, a genuine smile without the performance I'd grown used to. You built something beautiful when no one was watching, and now they can't look away. We clinked glasses silently. Whatever happened next with my family, whether reconciliation would be possible or not, I knew I'd found something more valuable than their approval. I'd found my own foundation, solid and true. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making others fail. It's succeeding so completely that they're forced to witness what they missed by not believing in you sooner. And as I stood there, keys to an entire building in my pocket and the skyline spread before me, I realized that the wall I'd once been told to stand against had become the view I now commanded. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.